Alright people, what's up, what's up? This is Rother over here at New Era Gardener. I'm back at you with another video, and this video is going to be just of some of my bedding. And I just want to show and do a little show of what we can do with the leftover pieces of our peat moss. So usually when you do your peat moss, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a texture guy, so I like the texture to be kind of sifted really good. So what I usually do is I take my peat moss and I sift it through an 1/8 inch screen, get all the smaller, finer pieces, and you're left with pieces like this. Move this to the side. And you're left with pieces like this, which is usually the bigger pieces, you know, that you can't really make smaller. So what I do is I usually save that to the end, when I kind of get rid of and use all of what I sifted through. And then we're left with this. I don't know what other people do with theirs, but I don't throw it away. I use it for several things. I use it also for when I, at the end of the season, when I dig up my bulbs and my tubulars and I put them away for the winter, I usually put it in this particular stuff. And this is good because any moisture that might be into the tubulars or the bulbs, it actually will suck it out and it'll allow them to be able to be used for the following year. So don't ever throw this stuff away. It's a great thing that you can reuse. So what I usually do is I just pour it into my blender, and as you can see, it's big pieces. And usually what I do is I just close it up, and that's all I do. So I just put it through that, and then this is what you end up with. You end up with just shredding it up, and then you can sift this and get the smaller pieces out and keep doing the same thing that you do, but you do get real fine material. So that way you never waste anything. So, and then a lot of times when I get down to this point and I sift it and I sift out all the big stuff, all the bigger particles, I'm left with the powder, which is all the fine stuff that I like to use in my worm bins for bedding. So that's all I do. That works out great. It's definitely a good thing to do, and it works good. And then you're not wasting anything. Nothing goes to waste. Zero cost. I know, like, some guys, they use it on their lawns, and when they go through it, they get all these big particles and they just throw it away because they don't want the big particles on their grass, or on the grass when they're doing new seedlings or planting new grass. So that's what I do at mine. I don't throw anything away. I wind up using it and sift this out again, and then whatever I have left, So I have probably about 4 bags of this and a 5-gallon bucket full of it. So I'll never be out of it before I have to buy another one. And this is a good thing to use. It's not going to waste. Reuse it. All right. So that's one good thing that you do. But let's take a look at my bedding. All right. So this is my bedding. It's some bedding that I actually made up already. And this consists of peat moss, newspaper, cardboard, and my compost that I made last year. And that gives it a good balance. And it already actually, with the compost, you're already activating the bedding because of the compost. The compost has a lot of biology in it, has a lot of microbes in it, and you're already ready to go. I mean, look at that. That's beautiful stuff. And what I take and do is already, I already put some crab meal. I got some new crab meal in, and I like to make mine fine. So I shred it, I actually pulverize it by putting it in my bullet, and I just make it finer. So that's what's in here right now. This is the bigger stuff that I had after I pulverized it a couple of times, and I just put it in here. So that's all this is. So to this bedding, and you hear me say this all the time, what you put in is what you get out. And we're using this in our garden, we're using it in our house plants, we're using it in our seedling mix, we're using it in our transplant mix. So everything that you put in is what your plant needs. So that's actually a good thing. So usually what I take and do also is, let me grab it. I also add in, this is my alpaca manure. This is the bigger stuff, bigger pieces that I actually have, that when I get the beans out, this is just the stuff that was on the floor and it's gotten squished, and pieces of it have actually kind of gotten together and made bigger clumps. So what I do with this is I put this in the blender, shred this up, and actually add it into my bedding. I used to use this also as most of my bedding, but I didn't like what was happening. Sometimes I had some issues with too many mites or something like that. So I actually decided to only use this as feed. So what I do is I shred it up and I just put it on the top of the bedding, and they just eat it. That's how I feed it to them now. I do add some into the bedding also, but not a lot. So like this isn't all the bedding, but usually a little more of this. So I add maybe about 1 pound of shredded alpaca manure into this, which isn't a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot based on what this is. So that's one other thing that you can add to your bedding. And the worms are going to eat it. It's feeding the worms. They got constant food. So one of the other thing is you add your minerals in. So one of the things that I like to always add into my bedding is some some kelp meal. So this is about a third of a cup. I had 2 of those in there. That's enough in there just to kind of give your worm something to gnaw on. Also, it's good for the bacteria to add some sugar into your mix, also your bedding. And then also some alfalfa meal. You're not adding so much alfalfa meal that it's going to really heat up. But the alfalfa meal is also good for your plants, for the worms. They will eat it. Also, then you just want to mix it in really good. I didn't grab it, but one of the other things I have started to add into my bedding is also some of the rock dust. So the rock dust, that way it's in your bedding. It gives it a chance to break down, start to break down, which it might take a couple of months for it to fully break down. So as you have it in your bedding, it will actually start to break down, and it's good for the worms. It's almost as a grit for them also. I didn't grab it, but that's another thing that you can add into it. But that's pretty much all that I want to do. And then one other thing you can always add into it is also, which is a benefit for the plants, for the worms, and I think it's underrated for how people use it. Which is biochar. This is my own homemade biochar. This is what I consider flakes and powder. And it just adds another carbon, and it also gives the microbes something to attach itself to. And I like to use the fine and the powder and the nuggets for my bedding. But that's just a quick way that you can make your bedding. And the worms seem to love it. And as far as my bedding, what I could say is that as far as I would say the combination that I use, I probably would say it's probably 60% compost, probably about 40% of the peat moss. The peat moss is very fluffy, so and it's actually food for the worms also. But that's kind of my mix that I kind of do, and that works pretty good. And you always know once you start adding in your biochar, you can always tell it'll start to dry it up a little bit, because the biochar will suck up a lot of moisture. So you might have to add some more moisture. And usually what I do is, when I put it in the bucket, because I try to make a little bit up ahead of time. And what I do is I try to, once I put it in the bucket, the moisture that's in it is what it is. And there's good moisture in there. There's no water dripping from it. You might get a drip or two, but that's good moisture. So, and then what I do is I put it in the bucket, let it sit in the bucket until I need to change a bed and put new bedding in it, change out the worms. And then what I do is, as I put in, usually I put in half, and then I add some moisture to it. And then I put the rest in, then I add some moisture to it. Not to drench it, but just to add some moisture to it. The worms really will benefit from that, seeing that they breathe through their skin. Everything will actually help it. So that's just a quick way that you can make your bedding using what you have. And you want to keep it low cost. And the biggest cost for me are the minerals that I add to it. So I have to buy the minerals, I have to buy the crab meal, I have to buy the azomite or the glacier rock dust, the alfalfa meal, and the kelp meal. So those things are the cost. And like I said, by taking your leftover bits and pieces of your peat moss and putting it in a blender or putting it in a food processor, whatever you have, to just kind of chop it up, you can stretch it. I tried one time using the leftover remnants of the peat moss. I left it whole, put it in, but that bad boy dried up so quick. I had to keep adding moisture to it, even though I soaked it in water so it would suck up moisture. But still, the same thing happened. It needed a lot of moisture from time to time. So, but this is just a quick way. Give it a shot. Don't throw out your peat moss after you actually sift it and get all the big pieces out of it, because like I showed you, you can put it in a blender, you can put it in a food processor. I have a food processor I bought strictly for using it to shred my alpaca manure to feed the worms and to put into the bedding, and also because I sell it, I also needed something to shred it, and that's the best way to do so. So once again, this is New Era Gardener. I appreciate you guys watching the video, but this is just bedding and what you can do with leftover peat moss. Don't throw it away, shred it, use it, and you'll have some very good bedding. And the newspaper and the cardboard. Alright, so once again, like I said, this is New Era Gardener. Appreciate you guys watching. If you like the content, like, subscribe, so you can see the content that I'll be putting out. I appreciate you. Alright, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your evening.